You're listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa, and Sinoshaw.
Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Box. I'm Halisa, and there's Duro, Timmy, and Sinoshaw. So today we're going to talk about news, fake news, media censorship, propaganda. It's the conversation that we're supposed to have had, depending on when we have it. I think there's another kind of content you can even bring to that conversation. If it was before the election, we'll say, what are these people trying to do on the media? What games are being played, And now we've come to a time where people are kind of trying to blame the other people for fake news. And then we're like, let's actually talk about this. Let's get into this conversation with actually defining what fake news is. Let's not say definition, so to say. It's not that. It's not as solid as definition, but what comes to your mind when you hear fake news, or what determines that a news is fake to you?
Yeah. Fake news is fake news. It's pretty much straightforward. But I think fake news is, for me, it's anything that is intentionally shared to mislead the public. I think that's what I would, term as fake news. And it's pretty much straightforward, but I think it means different things to different people. Because for some people that I've interacted with, to be honest, especially people who are politically have a political leaning, I don't want to say just let me use our country, let me use Nigeria. What they would say is fake news is any news that is not in their favor, whether it's true or it's false. So if a president is sick and a media platform reports that he has been flown out of the country to get medical treatment or whatsoever, the supporters of that particular party would term that as fake news, and they have made it a duty to demonize and vilify platforms that report things that are not in favor of their government. So to me, it's fake news is definitely sharing wrong information to mislead the public, but it might mean different things to different people depending on who you're asking. So it's a really interesting topic. It's something that we should have discussed a long time ago, but I'm happy that we are discussing it, today.
Okay, we'll come back to that conversation for sure. We have a lot to say about it. Well, Sinoshaw, when you hear fake news, what qualifies something to be fake, a news to be fake to you?
There is no fake news. And I would take a leaf from what Dorothy had rightly posited earlier. The subjective nature of truth in itself, right, is the problem here, right? Because when you go around, right, there is no absolute view of what is the truth in the world. And that's why people will always tell you that, okay, let me say in my leaning, we believe there is no absolute view of what is the truth, right? And then what now causes is a situation whereby in 2010, right, it could have made sense to say the band is the best artist or musician out of Nigeria. It could have made sense. Oh, the most internationally marketable brand in the music industry in Nigeria. Oh, Two-Face Idibia. But if a person who perhaps has been cut off from the world for the past 10 years comes out today and tells you like, oh, who's the best musician in Nigeria? That person is probably going to still tell you that it is, this guy, Two-Face, African Queen. Take a little breather and ask a person who just finished university in 2022. They will tell you, oh, Wheezy, Davido, Burna Boy. Go back to 2013. Some people will tell you it's Wizkid. Go back to 2016. Some people will tell you it's Olamide. Come to 2019 after people will tell you it's Burna Boy. So the fact that we do not seem to agree on an objective value for truth or definition of truth means in a sense that what we have now, right, is a situation whereby we have a relative view of what truth is. So when you now say somebody is telling something fake, right? You probably are speaking from your own prism and then leaving the other people who perhaps may have limited information to be seen as people who are perpetrator of falsehood. But I do not think there's anything like fake news. We can make it a debate and perhaps our listeners would enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you kind of took it slightly philosophical, because when you start saying something like there's no absolute truth, and then all of those things, then it's like, are you sure is that subjective? Is there no science to it that you say, yeah, this is not fact or this is fact? I think that to a certain degree there are some news that should be objective, because before I used to operate in that gray area a lot, just in my attempt to understand a lot of people, like to understand how people think, because it's very difficult for me to do that. But I was just like, okay, let me leave a lot of gray area so I can dabble in and out of different things. So let me not just look at the world as if it's white or black. But it gets to a point that you just feel like, I think that this and this should just be absolute like that. I think this should be completely objective. Then these other things can be left for debate. That's just the way I see it. And I think, yeah, there might be some things that some news that I would categorize as fake news. But like you said something I wanted to even, pinch from, when you said that some people, it's because it's out of your purview, you think that this news does not exist, right? And then so for some people it's actually something that it's something that exists. So are we now trying to say that the effect of the news is what determines if it's fake news or not, or the peddler, is it from the person that is bringing that news forward, or is it from the point of view of the person that is receiving it, right? So yeah, I mean, lots of questions to be asked around this particular conversation, and I think it's something that should be debated for real. Because if we close our eyes like this and open it before we say Jack Robinson, like tomorrow we'll see that they are slamming censorship on different types of news, because a lot of Nigerians have been calling for it, without them understanding what they are like maybe knowing, which is a bit scary for me, because I'm thinking, where do we draw the line for these things, or where do we call for some level of censorship for the kind of information that should be allowed to fly on the internet? Yeah, you can hop in anywhere, anywhere.
That's a great question. No, that's a great question. No, that because like um we I think this conversation is it's a very broad conversation, to be honest. Like I don't even know where it started from, but I'm going to say this right before I answer the question. There's actually a lot of fake news out there, and as you guys were talking, I was just laughing in my mind because I remember like all of those things that mostly our parents used to share on WhatsApp. Like you see, this message has been forwarded.
Oh, I shouldn't have laughed
This
aloud.
message
Like,
has been forwarded too many times. you know, there's actually a lot of fake
especially when
news
it
out
when it,
there.
when it's concerning science, like this particular thing, if you drink this amount of water, this will happen, or if you eat garlic, all
Yes,
of those things that are concerning science. I don't know
yes.
where we should put those ones, Ev.
So it
Go
does
ahead.
take me to like, and there was a time that I think WhatsApp had to add that feature, because people were just forwarding things. That was like 2013, 14, 15. I think about 16 was when they had to like add that feature, to show that this message has been forwarded too many times, because they tried to, crack down on fake news. And so that being said, it takes me back to your
Well,
question, that
that's
where do we
pretty
actually draw the
worrying
line?
though. If WhatsApp can get
Yeah,
access to crack down. No, the thing is, it's like you have to give up one right. So now WhatsApp does this end-to-end encryption. So that's why people say. But then it's like it's pretty suspicious, because people are saying WhatsApp is not even safe. Like you have to go to, what's this other app that people like to use a lot, that is like very
Telegram.
very, yeah, Telegram. Telegram, they say it's very Russia technology. What country is that app even from? I don't know, but it's highly encrypted. I think people feel more safe. But then if WhatsApp people like Meta, I mean, those guys, I don't even trust them. If they can come onto your, your chats to see if you're receiving fake news or not, it's like, am I scared of you, or am I wary of like the other people? So it's like, where
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just going
I
on this
don't I
line.
don't actually trust any of those apps, and to be honest, to say that any of my conversation is safe, even if you're doing a video call or whatever, I don't actually trust any of those things. But it is what it is. But then, like, coming back to the conversation about
Yeah,
fake
yeah,
news and and all of this this things, I want to think that I want to ask a question first, before we can determine where we draw the line, is what motive do some people have for sharing, for putting out some sort of information out there which may not necessarily be true. It takes time to draft some of these things. It takes um it takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of, not a little bit, it takes conscious effort to put out misleading information out to the public, right? So what purpose, what motive do people have, you know, behind sharing some of these things? And that is where you can now determine, oh, this is where we draw, this is where we should draw the line as to what should be accepted or not. Could it be that some people are unintentionally misinformed, and unintentionally they try to share that their misinformation with other people? Because if I tell you, if you pick up the phone now, you know let me give a personal example. I want to give a personal example. So I do know some people that exaggerate a lot. I know some people that exaggerate a lot. So, and I've had that for a long time. Let me give you an instance. So my mom can literally call me and tell me that, let's say there's just maybe there's small rain on the, like, small rain fell and maybe there's a little bit of flood. My mom can literally tell me it is flooded. As I was going out, this road was flooded, and out of that information I've received, I could go to social media and say, oh, don't pass this road if you're going to this route. It is actually flooded. So some people, I just use that very simple example because I do know that when you go on platforms like Twitter, you know, you go on platforms like Twitter, you see, in fact, when you scroll down your timeline, you just see a lot of stuff that will just be like, come on, this is false. But guess what? That thing has 5,000 likes, 10,000 likes. How many reposts or how many retweets, or what do they call it now? Because it's no longer retweets. You see the thing having like 10,000 retweets, 20,000 likes, but you know that this thing is false. So what I want to take it from the part of motive. Some people share fake news because they themselves received fake news, and it's so easy to disseminate information now in the era of social media. So sometimes the motive might not be actually intentional, or it might not be to actually misinform people or whatever, but just because they received that information, and everybody in this age and time wants to be the guy that broke the news. Everybody wants to be like the CNN reporter that broke the news first. So if I hear one small gist, maybe for the sake of clout, or it came for me first, people just want to go out there and share it. So take, for example, um what we have in Nigeria that's going on now, with like several people being controlled by the outcome of the election emotionally and everything. And then people see, maybe like now that we have court cases and we have all of these things, or many people don't like the president, and they just hear one small what whispers into people's ears again. One small insect just whispers into their ears, and they want to put that thing out there. So I don't know if we can actually determine where to actually draw the line. Maybe except the person is a serial offender, or I don't really know. I don't even know
Yeah,
how
because you talked
to
about
Yeah,
yeah.
this serial offender
yeah.
thing, right? There's this
Sorry,
recent case, like sinuses. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was going to actually quickly build on what Dorothy said. We started a conversation where I said there's no fake news, and I think saying there is no fake news in itself, right, might not be entirely correct until a
It's fake news.
reporter. Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Here is the case. Here is the case,
Okay.
right? Because when you say fake news, fake news, fake news, you literally are just talking. But the point is, like Rotimi said, I'll quickly quote a case that I think I have seen somewhere before. I think it was a case credited to, I was reading the law report really in the US, trying to check something, right? Especially when people were mentioning about Tinubu and all of this. So I came across something in Missouri State, the state of Missouri, that I think does not apply to what people were claiming or alleging about Tinubu in Chicago. You know, all of these people have different legal jurisprudence for different areas, if I'm not mistaken. So now, the point is, I was now trying to find, because if money is in your account, right? I was trying to say, okay, the same money is in this guy's account. This money could have come from anywhere. What they said is proceed of illegal substance. And I'm not like, okay, who exactly traced the motive is the key thing. If, for instance, if I tell Alisa now, Alisa is raining outside, and Alisa goes outside, and before she comes back in, I said, okay, do it to me. Alisa is this, Alisa is that, Alisa is this, Alisa is that, and then I in one way maligned the person of Alisa, right? Then it could easily be established, right, that the motive, right, is, I mean, we're not coming from a place of innocence. We're coming from a place of a deliberate falsehood to move Alexa out while I perpetuate the job of maligning a person. I don't know, maybe this makes sense, guys. So that motive in itself, right? No, in that case, now you are literally trying to draw impulse, right? So that you can make some certain actions. Then that in itself, right, can now show maybe what you have said in the view sense is fake or the truth. I don't know, maybe this makes sense, guys. Because there is innocent misrepresentation, right? And there is deliberate, willful misrepresentation of fact. And that will now take us to the conversation entirely, where somebody was saying a Supreme Court judge is resigned because he doesn't want to be part of a kind of truncation of justice or miscarriage of justice. And the person came out later and said, I did not resign. But if you look at the person who gave that information, right, and you see the fact that this person had over the time been doing everything to pile pressure on the judiciary, not in the right way, right? Then you will know that when the statement was released, you have an impetus, or let me say the motivation, to try to see the motive behind that statement, to try to corroborate that fact statement, maybe it's a fact or not. So literally, there is no fake news until it is proven that it is indeed fake. And that there is a deliberate. Now, this is not entirely a condition that makes it fake or not, but it's part of the conditions. Like, it is entirely intended to mislead the listeners or the readers, as the case may be. So I just wanted to build on that to say, okay, well, motive in itself is a very important factor that helps determine. Okay, I'm looking for the case online now. I think it's in the case of State versus Friend, right? It was a case of assault, right? And they were able to prove the motive behind the assault, right? And they were able to secure the necessary, is it sanction they call it now in law, or perhaps a sentence or whatsoever, what have you there. But the point I am trying to make is, if a statement comes out from a mouth, from a mouth, right? That statement in itself, it is not fake news until the motive behind the statement is established. I don't know if this makes sense, guys. So that's literally one of the very important things that I think I can add to this conversation, so that anybody who's listening to us, because, like Ruth Mimali said, we're in the age of social media where news travel at the speed of light, and then you see some messages come to you, 1,000 people have shared it. Why is it that we have 1,000 people ready to share a message? What is going on? What is exactly? One thing is that message is able to draw impulse from people. And when people become impulsive because of something, be very sure that there is a sensitive line in that news. And when there is a sensitive line in any news, it could be a draw in the sense of the person who had prepared the news is trying to use that to draw people in to read, like the sensational media that we have now in Nigeria. You understand? So fake news in the view sense, right, is not something you can reasonably gauge in a kind of alone. You have got to build on establishing the motive, and by the time you establish the motive, then you can now reasonably say, okay, this is a fake news. I don't know if this makes
So
sense, but that's what I
I have
But
a
establish.
question for you.
who would establish that this thing motive? Is it not until the thing has gone to court and then they're like, okay, this is a case now, and then you're like, okay, let's establish the motive, which is how maybe the court of law
Not all of,
works.
not all of them will get to court. That is why
And
all
then
of us also
again,
That's
have
the
like,
thing. That's what I'm
that.
saying.
That
Whose responsibility does that?
no,
Whose shoulder does that fall on?
it is a
The receiver of the
responsibility of
information.
it is the responsibility of anyone who is going to share any information to corroborate.
So it's the person that is sharing
exactly.
it, not the
So
person receiving
this
it.
is where I was going to before.
Yes,
This is where the
we,
question I wanted to chip in. I wanted to
yeah,
ask
we
you
have the
guys:
duty of care.
is any
That's it.
news that you can't prove fake? So
Don't
what if I
post.
have some information, but I can't prove it? Is that fake?
I guess that's why a lot of media personnel get to use the word alleged,
So
isn't it?
That's because it's written in the book. They are just going by the books, which is
But
good. I mean, that's a very
can we,
solid point.
can we establish a case of defamation if someone is using alleged?
You
Isn't
can't.
that
You
why people
can't.
no,
are,
you
Then
can't. You can't.
can we? I'm
You
not sure
no,
we can.
can't.
you
So
can.
that's why. Oh,
You
allegedly,
cannot.
allegedly,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
may
If it's
not be able
allegedly,
to
then
reasonably prove that. What people
So
might
what
just
if?
not.
What if?
Okay.
So what if? Let me paint a scenario here. I am a son to a top military officer, and then overhear him discussing with my mom that him and his peers have been and his colleagues have been, talking about taking over the government, or organizing a coup, right? And I go tell that thing to maybe my girlfriend, or any of my friends, like, just as gist. This is what I heard. Like, this is what I and from them it leaks out to social media. So are we going to say that because I heard? Let's say I heard this thing. Okay, because I'm trying to ask. Maybe we should have had like a journalist also, like, in this conversation, but because I've heard many journalists say, "Oh, I'm protecting my source." They've been accused of fake news, but the journalists will say, "Oh, they are protecting their source and everything." If I can't prove it, and what I'm trying to say, kind of question the question I'm trying to ask actually is, if I can't prove it, is it necessarily fake? Even though I heard it, is it necessarily fake news?
Sinosure, go ahead.
I guess you go explain entire no evidence because now
No
now
evidence.
yeah now this is like I was saying earlier, right? That's where it gets dicey, right? You can share the. I mean, when people were saying there was a bomb blast at Keja, then even about just time here, a lot of people actually didn't take that message seriously. People who were not in Lagos, they didn't take it seriously until they now started reading on the news that, oh, a lot of people died, a lot of people were submerged in swamps and all of these things. But the conversation really is, if somebody who does not believe that message had gone without exercising any care towards a Keja and the person was stampeded, it's the person's loss, isn't it? So that's the reason why I said earlier that what I think is important, right, is that anytime you get any information, you exercise care. That duty of
Critical
care,
thinking, right?
right, and which will now take us perhaps even to a whole new conversation, which is pretty much around how people are able to critically analyze things within the context of Nigeria.
But that's not a
No,
skill
And
that
people
many
are
people have
tired
at the end of the
now.
day.
Fuel is expensive. Everything is expensive. I'll now be critically analyzing.
But like what you just said that, Alisa, someone can just come up with a story like, "Oh, this money that they actually remove." Like, you see, side note show at Halisa, the worst fake news is not on social media. The worst fake news is actually on the streets. People cook up all sorts of stories. Someone can come up and say, "Oh, the reason why they are doing this is because they want to do this or whatsoever." But I understand the point that Sinosha is raising, even though critical thinking is not a skill that many people have. People cannot critically think. I think that's common sense is not even common. Um, common sense is the basic, then you can start advancing into critical thinking, and it's not common. But one thing that I really want to say is that, because we know, I for me, I actually accept the fact that there's actually fake news. A lot of we've seen a lot now. Just if you look on social media in this election, and I was talking about motive before. A lot of people do these things because they are doing it for likes and retweets. Like, if you actually sit down to cook, like, they call it cooking now on social media, where you just cook up different kinds of stories that may not necessarily be true and everything. If you actually sit down to do all of those things, you get a lot of, I think, you get a lot of likes, retweet, and another motive again is for what comes with it. Because trust me, there is a huge demand for this thing. There's a huge market for fake news. I think, like maybe Halisa said, maybe because people are not. There's again, me, I always reference
There's a
like
vacuum.
previous.
There's always, yeah. Go
Yes, I
ahead.
always reference like previous things that have happened in government, and there's a huge separation, a huge gap between a huge mistrust, for the government by the citizens, right? So there's a huge market. If you want to put out information or misinformation, there's a very huge market that will receive you. So just imagine that COVID era. Imagine the COVID time when people all across the world do not even trust the government. So it's anyone that came up with propaganda or anything at that particular time. There are a lot of people that are willing to receive that information, because the governments all across the world do not necessarily communicate the truth to their people. So this creates a lot of room for fake news. So I think that
Is
as long as that market exists, that people that want to consume this fake news, you'll surely see people, continuing to do this thing, even the worst of the worst, like just cooking up fake things and putting it out there, for people to see. So it is
yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah,
to be honest.
yeah. Sinush, I caught you off when you were talking about critical thinking, because yes, I understand. I feel like there's like group of people that you can say, yeah, you are actually reading, you have time. It's like you are comfortable. You should be able to exercise critical thinking. Maybe you're talking about those group of people, and I just like maybe generalize too much. But I'm just like, I feel like I'm just fed up with like the people carrying on so much responsibility on their back, hold your governors accountable, hold your local government chairman accountable, and you're not eating well, oh. And then now you start to analyze news critically, and that's why I
Yeah,
just like,
you have to
go
do work
ahead.
that you're not being paid for.
Yes, I should go ahead, and then I'll come back to a little bit of specific, because there have been a few cases, like things that have been happening that I want to actually like just specifically point out. So I should carry on.
Oh, okay, okay. I was actually talking about critical thinking and the duty of care that we all owe to the society, right? And then, and don't also forget, right? There are instances where we have seen people come out with some statements, right, that are utterly ridiculous, but they are not fake news, right? For instance, like somebody asked me,
Good.
"Oh, wait now."
Okay.
They ask you, oh, you are a Christian. Did you go to church today? Assuming you watched the service on YouTube, will you say you went to church or not? And in the view sense, the person is asking maybe you went to a physical church. But the person just literally loosely asks you, did you go to church today? What would you say? Most people will say I went to church. I paid my tithe. I paid my offering. Oh, the service was wow. Pastor was marvelous. Did you see those choir from South Africa? They danced so well. They didn't go to church, but they attended service. So loosely, right, the person has asked the question, and that has allowed the person to play around it. So now when somebody now say, Ayo Deji went to church today, then you, Alisa, that was probably on phone with me, or perhaps on chat with me, and I don't chat when I'm in the physical building, which is the church that the person is asking maybe I went to. but the person is not asking directly. You know that I didn't go and you were like, oh, we were talking all day today. And somebody said, oh, you told me you attended service and you all came to me and I said I attended service. Yeah. And the person now asked me later, were you in church physically? And I said, no. But I attended service through YouTube. You see how the world is in such a way that you should not limit any conversation to one and zero binary. So that's the reason why I was actually first of the opinion. That's now, if it is proven that the intention is for me to mislead that person who had asked me that question, then it now becomes an entirely fake news. But if I had done it, right, from a place of saying, okay, attending service online is as well going to church, then it's not fake. So that nuance in every conversation and the ability to understand things within context is not what is very important that we all must have as a skill. Which is why I also think critical thinking is important. And let me take you on a few trip. I don't want to digress so much. We had been talking recently, and somebody said to me and said, "Oh, there is a lot of liquidity in the system. Let's raise interest rate so we can mock the money in the system." Ordinarily, when you raise interest rate, it is expected, right, that we start to see contraction in financial system liquidity, which is the money in the system now in the real case, both soft and hard. Now, and I said to the person, I said, one of the conversations that the University of California, the Department of Economics, they are having currently is that when we take these policy actions, macroeconomic policy actions, and we take them to emerging market of, let me say, some frontier market as well, what we are doing is fitting a round peg in a square hole. Because in the real sense, most of these economies are not credit centric. So in the real sense, you are not discouraging any consumption. You are literally just going to spur up the interest that businesses are getting to pay on the loans that they are taking. So that's me just saying, okay, oh, okay, doing the policy can be right for the person who is thinking about it. But in the real situation, the context of those people, let's say Ghana, Nigeria, it might not be right because how many credit cards have you seen around? Right, except for the recently springing.
But I would have to come in. Like I've been trying to fit my head into the conversation, but I will have to just like call you a bit. You said the motive, right? It feels like maybe up until this point you said the motive is very important, but now you're saying like, yeah, your motive might be correct. Like the person that would make up all of those policies, use those models from like developed markets to emerging markets, but it's like that was it called, the intention of creating that was also okay. So that's why my own argument is, when it comes to this news of a thing, is it where it's coming from or the impact that it's going to have that is more important? Yes, you might not be able to isolate both of them, but if you try to like maybe think about like the emotion or the intention of that information, maybe a bit more higher than I don't think you did that comparison anyways, but in my head, I'm hearing it as you're saying the motive is maybe more important. But I'm thinking about it, like, I think it's the effect or the impact of it. Let's say recently, this man, Faust's dad was
Don't you think? Don't you think? Don't you think the impact will explain the motive one way or the other?
it
Because when
doesn't
you
it
see
doesn't always though.
hold
But
on.
but,
When
but
a moment, please. When you see the impact and you see the beneficiary from the person that benefited from that impact, it explains the motive. Does that make sense? Like if I say, okay, Alisa, it's raining out there, and you went outside to quickly go perhaps remove your pegs, right? And you came back inside, and the me just suddenly turned against you and said, "Yo, I don't want to talk to you again." And you said, "What did I do?" Right? And I started laughing. And perhaps some months later, the money me used to give to me and you, if it does give us any money, you started giving it to me alone. Does that not explain things clearly? That all I wanted to do was just plant discord amongst both of you so that I can be the sole beneficiary from the proceeds that we usually get from him.
so okay, recently there's been this Arise News debate, right, between Rufai and Rotus. You probably paid attention to it or not, I don't know. But even me, I don't even get the particular content. But I saw this evening where Rotus from Arise News was kind of saying that he apologized to Rufai because he said that Rufai was lying. But then he came up to say that Rufai was not lying. He only was caring about he wasn't exactly lying, I guess, in quote at this point, because they are just explaining that Rufai was just caring for the people first. So he might overbloat or overestimate or,
No, no, no,
overspeak
no,
on some things. Why Rotus
no,
was saying the facts should persist those things.
none of them were lying on in that clip. And I'm able to state that any other person can probably disagree. If you bring better data points, I can agree with you because I believe in God. Every other person must bring data. Now, having said that, look at what Otos came back to say. Otos came back and told us that, oh, Rufai is putting the people first. That's literally what he said. And then he
Right.
think that some other things must come before the people. Meanwhile, the essence of governance is the people. I don't know, maybe this makes sense to you. The
That,
reason
do you know,
why
this
we
is one
have
of the biggest problems we're having because a lot of people, we don't know. I think there's a great divide on what should come before what. And I think that leads a lot of thought, but people just want to ignore those kind of ideologies or something like that. Because
I
this
agree.
man heavily believed that what's it called, numbers, because you need to maybe get the numbers clear, get the books cleared up completely before you that's going to now impact the lives of the people. But Rufai or someone else will tell you, no, you need to think about it from the people's point of view. But then I'm going to say this example because it's been going on in my head. Femi Falana, right? That's Fal's dad. He came on the news recently and he said that there's like 500 billion worth of gold that or like solid mineral that is being exported out of
Nine
Nigeria
billion
that's not
dollars. So he said.
yeah, that is not accounted for. And then people are like, that's like a gross that's an
How much did he say? How
overestimation.
much? How much did he say?
Is it 500 billion?
No, no, no. I had
Are
9
we
billion. 9
50?
billion, 9 billion USD.
Okay. I mean, I think I
So
saw
these are
it,
these are fake news. Spread.
but that's
No,
what
no.
This is
this
our fake
figure.
news. This is our fake
Really?
So,
news.
no, the point is that for me now, it's if he went maybe straight to the National Bureau of Statistics or what you call it. I know Sinosha really holds that distance really there compared to other this thing, but it's like if he went there and saw the data for the gold that was there, it's like first of all, who sponsored this research that was done? Is it a government
No.
research? Is it an NGO research? If you now bring me a data there, how am I even supposed to believe that? But that's that on that. It's like what I'm trying to
Let's
say
take
in essence
let's
is
take it like this, if you don't
what I'm
mind.
trying to say, let me say this first. What I'm trying to say is that the what's it called? The intention of that, maybe he over bloated it, but at the end of the day, people kind of got charged a bit and like we got to be like, okay, this is what is actually going on. So the impact of that particular news at the end of the day, whether the figure is bloated or not, is that people woke up slightly. I mean, they might sleep back, very good at doing that, but people kind of like got interested more in the gold that is being, taken out of Nigeria or something. Go ahead, please.
No, the problem really oftentimes is what Falana said is not fake news. I just think it's an information that was exaggerated. It seems more like what you can call propaganda, right? But I'm not sure it is entirely a fake news because there was a reportage about a certain National Assembly House committee on solid mineral, I think, where they said Nigeria loses about $9 billion, I think, annually. So it probably took the solid mineral in that context to mean good. You get? So now it now speaks to the level of education people have in a certain field and why they should not be allowed. I mean,
Okay.
if someone
I
calls
mean,
Duro to me, if someone calls Duro to me on media, right, I wouldn't talk too much. I would just allow him to talk because I know he probably has a command of what the operationality of that sector is. But for me, right, I may be able to speak like the finance manager of an artist. I don't know, maybe this makes sense. Like, oh, I am the one that helps manage the finances, keeps the book, all of this. I may be able to speak from that perspective, but what do you mean we'll be able to speak on how to set the stage, the best kind of mic to use, and all of this? And that is why the Nigerian media as well has a duty to ensure that whenever they're going to have any conversation, the host are well grounded in the conversation they are having. And it's also part of the problem between Rufai and Rotus. Both of them seem like Rotus, I think they've said he studied economics, but he's not a practicing economist. Rufai studied animal science. He's not even in any way close to economy. So Rotus will probably regurgitate the theories, the established and what I like to call elitist economics framework across the world. And he will be talking. He will talk smoothly. A lot of people in Nigeria will agree with him. Because even in our schools as well, they don't teach critical understanding of those subject matter. Now, when you come to the market, right, you will see, when I say market now, I mean when you come to the real world, you will see economic data in real time. You can easily trace correlation, how they relate. You can even reasonably estimate causation, what causes what. Maybe it's a two-way thing or a one-way thing. You can easily reasonably estimate all of those things. But for somebody who had gone to school and is now in media, who just invites people and they talk and he shares with them because he has understanding of economics, he might not have that reach and depth. So the two of them are probably even confusing the whole country, right? But they are saying the things they are saying ignorantly. But it's not because, I'm not sure it's because they want to mislead people. So when we will now be able to prove maybe they are misleading people, is if somebody comes out tomorrow and tells you that a certain flow of money went into Votus account 2 months before he started saying those things online, and those amount of money are substantial enough to beat his earnings for the past 2 years. Then you can now say, oh, maybe somebody paid him. Maybe the motive is to mislead the people, or perhaps to make the people calm down.
Allegedly.
So that yeah, sure, you understand. So now the conversation is way beyond a yes or no kind of conversation. It's a conversation that has a lot of nuance and Rufai as well, right? You know, a lot of people were alleging at some point that Rufai summarize people, they work for OP, they do this, they do that. And you see, maybe due to consistency or inconsistency of their line of thought. For instance, I have seen some of them defend some actions in the past, right? One way or the other, softly defend them. And later, someone else decided to implement those policies, and those guys were going against the person. Oh, somebody could have done it better. This person could have done it better. And I said, okay, nobody does this any better. There is a Petroleum Industry Act since 2021 that had already spoken to the deregulation of the downstream sector in Nigeria. If anybody said, when I get to office, right on the spot, I'm going to remove it. And somebody got to the office too. He didn't say we even do it right on the spot. He said he will remove it or maybe you possess or not. But right on the spot, like your guy said, he said, okay, I will remove it as well. And you started regurgitating a lot of things, saying a lot of things that shows that you do not support that instant removal. Then it might show the motive. So motive is a very important thing, but we can't go around gauging motive, which is why we now owe the duty of care. Don't circulate information that you do not reasonably think can be correct. There are some things that cannot be correct. Like somebody was posting something today on one of the social medias where I belong. I was traveling, so I was reading too. And then the person posted 58%. Somebody won 58% in the Northwest. So another 48% in the Northwest. Another person won 23% in the Northwest. Another person now won, was it 40% in the Northwest? And I commented on that. I said, oh, LMAO. If you people think you have won, wait for the court. Now, maybe you also took evidence to the court and you said you believe the court will give you justice. Why are you all over the place? And then somebody now came under my own conversation and said, check the number you are responding to. I said, I know it is not correct. A percent is based on the concept of cent and dollar. Abi? Shabi cent is the lower version of the dollar, yeah, in currency denomination. So when you say 100 cents, you are speaking to $1. So whenever we say percent, we are saying per 100. So literally, the conversation of saying cent is now beyond 100 in a thing that has to do with the population of human being is completely an anomaly. So you can see from the first, oh, nah, maybe it's an error that this person committed in doing this. But if this person means this, it is a lie. It is not true. Right? Because there is an objective nature of truth around what a percentage is. I don't know if this makes sense, but that is how I see all of these things. It is our duty as a people to ensure that we exercise care in the course of passing on information amongst ourselves. Because information that you are passing could lead to the loss of the wealth that somebody has built all their life. You get? It could also lead
Bitcoin
by
just crashed, right?
who told you Bitcoin crash?
Maybe Bitcoin, maybe crypto. I don't know. You said you can lose the wealth, life wealth. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I mean,
Yeah.
people may just lose the wealth they built all their life because of a certain information that is incorrect. And
No.
also, very importantly, numerical literacy is also very important. Numerical literacy is important. At times, people will say, 50, it stole 50 trillion naira. And then you look at it yourself and you say 50 trillion. And in your head, you're calculating the math and you're like, 50 trillion, how? Where? You know it. You probably will be able to guess at that point that it is incorrect. So that gives you a second level job of confirming, corroborating those claims, and making things better for the people who you are going to pass it to. Don't pass the burden of check to any person. Do it first level. And then that way we will be able to establish motivation that you do not intend to mislead others. I hope that
You know
helps you.
what's so funny?
You're
Yeah?
to me.
You know what's so funny? You know what's so funny? This thing that you just said about people putting out figures that, but sometimes like sometimes too, sometimes when you actually check out, like I know that, how do I even put it? Fake news has been, it exists a lot in our society, and the fact that it is so prominent now that there are some things that you just see and dismiss. It has now become a tool in the hands of people who are intentionally doing wrong. The wrongdoers in society, the politicians, their supporters, is because that because we all know that, yes, fake news is actually out there in our society. Sometimes when some investigative reports are done and some figures are published that, oh, this person stole this amount, they're just so quick to dismiss it as, oh, it's fake news. So and that's how, like Carissa said, when people hear some things, they go back to sleep. It's also part of those reasons because a lot of stuff is dismissed by the government right now as fake news. They kill people when reports come out. People say it's fake news and everything. And if not for the same social media that we're talking about, thank God we even have like this audio feature. Imagine we had this audio feature during NSAS period. It will have been it will have been something else. So it will have been something else.
Yeah,
So
you
just
just
imagine,
mentioned the
yeah,
government. Now, do you think the government have a role to play? Like, what,
we
or
have
to what
a
extent?
huge
What kind of role
responsibility.
do they have to play?
It's not, it doesn't, their responsibility. Most people will tell you, oh, the government needs to regulate, the government needs to regulate, the government needs to regulate. No. See, in the absence of true information, if there is an information gap, you know information is the only thing that I know that there can never be a gap. If I it just imagine that if I keep quiet for 5 seconds, you guys will start talking. It is what it is. So just imagine that in this small podcast, if I go mute for 2 seconds, you would automatically someone else will pick up the conversation. Now imagine when you are in government and you do not communicate to the people, or there's inaccuracy or inconsistency in your communicate in what you've communicated out. People are going to fill in those gaps. So if the government is not more proactive with communication, just like when things happen in Nigerian politics, if you read most reports, out on most of our media platforms, right, by journalists and everything, when they are reporting something, there's always one paragraph that is very consistent in all of their reports. The paragraph is always, we tried to reach out to him, but as at the time of this report, there was no response. It's always, that is, especially in countries like Nigeria, it is like the default. Politicians don't respond to allegations against them. You know, if you're even accusing any rich person or any popular person of doing anything at all, right? They don't respond. They, because they have, and it's not just politics alone. Even when it comes to religion, just imagine one popular religious leader is accused of doing something, they'll just dismiss it because they have people that follow them regardless of whatever they've done. We don't have that consciousness in our society yet to say that this is where I'm going to draw the line. Oh, if this thing actually comes out that this person, if this report, actually comes out that this person did this thing, and then we can validate the claim that this person did this thing, I'm going to disconnect from this person. I'm going to withdraw my support from this person. So we don't even have that in our political space in Nigeria. We don't even have that in our religious space, and several places of influence. Even when it comes to regular celebrities, we don't really. I think it's celebrities that even get the when I mean celebrities, I mean entertainers that even get the highest amount of hits, when there's a negative report out there about them. But when it comes to politicians and religious leaders, they don't really get that thing. So the government has a huge role to play. Apart from regulation, I don't feel like anyone should be allowed to intentionally mislead the public. I feel like laws should be put in place. I feel some people are suggesting that Nigerian Twitter now should have this community notes where if there's a popular tweet, people can actually add more context to that tweet. And to be honest, I've seen it done on international tweets, and it makes so much sense because you can just see, like, I just recently read before this podcast. One guy tweeted he's an anti-American journalist. He's anti-America, but he's an American journalist. So he always puts up things in favor of Russia and everything. So he just he shared a picture and he said, Ukraine has put me on their Q list. But when I read the community notes, it showed that they only put him on a website that shows that these are the enemies of Ukraine. Do you understand? So they did not say, "Oh, assassinate this guy, shoot on sight." But if I'd gone with that particular headline, or particular tweets that he wrote, I would have believed that was the case. So for me,
That's
communication. If there's a communication gap, it's to be
I think
filled.
that's a more
And
that, like your
yeah,
your point is very very that's a very good point. Even instead of like doing all of this jatty with law, it's like if you give don't no don't that's a very good this thing. I've not even thought of it like the psychology angle. Like if on this podcast, we can't even go silent for 1 minute, and it happens when you're even going back and forth with someone, even in like like personal spaces. That's interesting, but that information gap thing, and when you're feeding us with information, we usually, like you said, it has to also be consistent and it has to be factual. Because if it's not, people are, I guess, intelligent enough to debunk it and say, okay, this does not work. That makes sense. And one case that actually happened recently, and I think I also like passed this one to Sino Show. He said, recently there was a guy that was arrested, not him, but his brother, because they put out a news kind of that Fashola is allegedly, I'm the one using this alleged now, anyways. He's the one writing the what's it called, the a verdict for the presidential electoral this thing now, the tribunal. He's the one putting out the
yeah,
tribunal results. Fashola has already written it, so
yeah,
it's a news that I guess the presidency, when I say presidency, maybe that office, got really like anxious about, and they wanted to like bring him in, and I think they couldn't find him, and then they took his brother in. So for a kind of news like that, would you consider it to be highly sensitive? Could you consider it a security threat? And would you say that the government, how right or wrong would you say the government have was in that particular situation?
it's to be
Also,
okay. Yeah,
okay,
go ahead, Tanisha.
sorry. The person who wrote the news said he picked it on social media. That's gross irresponsibility. You have a duty of care to check, right? But secondly, as well, how visible it is that Fashola is going to be the one writing whatever for the justices of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, or of the election tribunal now, have you?
Yeah, presidential electoral petition tribunal. Ah,
It
now I
doesn't
got it.
seem it doesn't seem logical to me, right? And which is why I actually found the old case a lot disturbing. Number one, that an adult can sit down, right, and write that. Number one, but secondly, also a lot of people will tell you that this is Nigeria. Anything you see, you take it like that, right? So literally, I think the people of Nigeria, by even buying that news, are showing the total the level of disregard that they have for the um, system for the administration of justice in Nigeria. Because if you know one thing for sure is that institutions are built on trust. Perhaps the Nigerian people have a basis to say that trust has been misappropriated over the years. And that's why they can easily run up with such news. And don't forget, Durotimi said something very importantly. If you leave a vacuum, it will be filled. What exactly is difficult with we getting a transcript of the proceed of the presidential election petition tribunal? I don't know if this makes sense to you. That level of transparency would have just helped everyone. So it's not just on the citizens alone to ensure that things are normal in terms of the information in the public space. The government also has a duty to ensure that that becomes the order of the day on their end as well. Transparency. And quite unfortunately for the guys, I think Fashola was at an event here in Lagos while they were claiming that he was locked up somewhere. He's locked himself somewhere with the justices and he was writing all of these things for them. And also, lastly, when you look at the motive as well, right, you can see that the people are trying to pressure the justices to ensure that they do right by the law. And I'm not sure that is under any guise wrong. But the way you go about it, don't malign other people, don't defame or in the form of slander or libel other people because you want to drive home a point. Don't forget as well that in the case of law, when it gets to law now, ignorance of the law is not an excuse in law. So I will rest. Thank you.
The way they make law to be vague, sometimes you would even think that, okay, they just, it's not is okay, let me not even put it like that. From my own perspective, it's pretty intentional, because the vagueness of that law would sometimes help the people that want to perpetrate um mm, maybe injustice in quotes, let me put it at that, because these people that went to get that person's brother now, they could say that where your own freedom of expression stops is where our own rights, begin, something like that. But there's just a lot of things that happen that, if for example, we have institutions where the rule of law works, then you say yes, let's have the law be the one to determine the kind of news that comes out, or to prosecute when the news is inaccurate. But we are looking at this legal structure that we have now, like, can we give you that responsibility? Do we trust that you deliver on that? If you've been delivering, then yes, we know that, okay, we can say yes, the law should take up this case and do something about the kind of news that we have floating. And the reason why we have this news seem like it's a lot more than before is just because we have a lot more media now than before. There are different forms of media now. Which day did these people form some facts, one kind of news media like that, and it already has so many people already following that news platform. So there's just so many channels that you can't really like it just like projects that there's so much fake news. But the other thing is that there's this thing that Dorothy even pointed out, which is social capital, like for clicks and retweets and all of that. That thing is massive, and Elon Musk just started paying. so, so we're going to see maybe a whole lot more, because there's a lot of reward from people tweeting something and for you to please, and not just please as far. If you're very, very polarizing to the very end, like if you're an extreme fake news peddler, you're going to get so much, people like coming to you. You have more customers. If you're extremely good, you have more customers. It's like anything you're looking for right now, there is something for you. If you're looking for fake news, if you're looking for bigotry, or if you're looking for something that is extremely, on the end of something of a spectrum, you're going to find something that fits that for you. So I think Dorothy, please help us round up. Say what you say what you
And the
have
question
on.
you should be asking is why? Why is it that when you tweet out all of those things, or when you put out all of this information, you have a lot of people who are willing to, subscribe to all of those things, bigotry, fake news, all of those things. They have a huge audience. I think it's something we need to analyze on maybe like another episode. But we're out of time here today, so I think it's a wrap for today. Thank you guys for
Yay.
listening
Thanks
in.
for joining. Follow us,
Do well
subscribe
to
actually, so you get notified for new episodes and you don't miss out. Thanks for joining
You're
us.
listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa, and Sinosure.